with Big Brains, where I have big conversations with smart people so you don't have to. Today we have David Basansany in talking about herd immunity. He's currently a microbiology student, and so he's kind of well-versed on the subject. Thanks so much for coming in today, Dave, and talking to us.
It is my pleasure.
We're excited to learn about this. This is probably an otherwise unknown topic, so I'm happy to learn.
Well, I'm happy to help you learn.
So with this most recent pandemic that we've all experienced in the masses, there's just been a lot of talk about the idea of herd immunity. But for the most part, I don't feel like this is something that is table talk. So I was wondering if you can give us a crash course in it.
Absolutely, I'd love to. So I have this visual aid here to kind of help us understand what herd immunity is. And so we start here and we have, let's say, a community of 100 people. And there is no immunity in this community. And so you have an infected person who comes into this community and they're able to spread it to all the people around them and all the people around them and all the people around them. And it just spreads like a wave through the whole community because no one in the community is immune. Well, with herd immunity, all these X's represent somebody who has developed some sort of immunity. Either they have gotten sick and they've gotten well from it, so they've got a natural form of immunity, or they have gotten vaccinated. And so through artificial immunity, they've gained it. But if an infected individual comes into this community, even though there are a lot of people that don't have immunity, if the people that are immediately around them have immunity, then they aren't able to pass it off and spread it to the people who don't have that immunity. And so essentially, by having a high percentage of people in the population being immune, it kind of protects the whole community, keeping them from getting sick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I wouldn't know that off the top of my head, so thank you. But I'm curious, what percentage of the population would really need to have this immunity in order for herd immunity to be achieved?
Well, it really depends on the disease and how contagious it is. You know, for example, measles, like one person who has measles can spread it to like 12 or up to 18 people.
Wow.
So it's very, very contagious. Yeah. And so in that situation, you have to have like 95% of your population immune to achieve herd immunity.
Wow.
Now, thankfully, like COVID-19, like one person could effectively infect like 2 to 3 people. And so what we see here is the level of herd immunity that would have to be achieved in order for this population for this disease to have herd immunity. So even though there are a lot of people who aren't immune, like 2/3 of the population in this case is immune and or has achieved immunity, and so that is considered herd immunity at that point. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So this name, herd immunity, it's thrown me off a little bit. I'm curious, did this start with some sort of herd animal group, or what initiated this title?
Well, it's really interesting. So way back, like over 100 years ago, in 1918, there was a pandemic. It was the 1918 influenza pandemic, also called the Spanish flu. Many people believe that ground zero for that pandemic was a rural community in Kansas. Well, you have this pandemic taking place there. There was also an epidemic that was taking place in cattle, where a cow who was pregnant, if they got sick, totally different disease, but if they got sick, it would cause a spontaneous abortion. And so, the cow owners were like, well, what do we do with these sick cows? Yeah. Do we kill them or whatever? Well, what they discovered is that if they let those cows get sick and then recover, over time, the herd would become immune because they would develop this, and then there wouldn't be this getting sick and having the spontaneous abortions. And so that's where the term originated at. I think a more accurate term for it would be community immunity, but it's kind of a mouthful. And like 100 years later, this name has kind of stuck, and here we are. We're still using it. So herd immunity.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. Okay, so since it began kind of back in the early 1900s, I am kind of curious about SARS in general, now that you brought it up. Because I feel like there has been this increase of, I would say, just increase in general of knowledge, desired knowledge, I should say, for the SARS pandemic. So I was wondering, why is that? Why are people making that correlation now?
Well, I think specifically with the pandemic of 1918, well, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, for one, it was a global pandemic. It was very, very, costly in the terms of lives. I mean, they estimate at least 50 million people, maybe as many as 100 million people died from it. And like I say, it was global. Mm-hmm. And so as we modern, today, mm-hmm. we're facing a pandemic. We're kind of going like, okay, this worst case scenario, this pandemic that went global, mm-hmm. What can we learn from that? And part of it was herd immunity, and there's some similarities and some differences. For one, the herd immunity was achieved with that. I mean, the pandemic, it grew. And then eventually, like the rate of infection, the number of new infections decreased as the global population. People either got the disease and they died from it, or they got the disease and they recovered from it, mm-hmm. and then they were immune to it. But one of the differences is back then, all there was natural immunity. Mm-hmm. In 1918, really the development of vaccines was super primitive. There were some vaccines for things like diphtheria and rabies, some things that were really persistent at the time, mm-hmm. but like for flu, things that were changing all the time, and then things like were crossing over from animals into people, there just wasn't the ability to develop those vaccines in a timely manner. So all they had was natural immunity, in essence, to achieve this. Yeah. Well, fast forward, over 100 years to 2019, we got the COVID outbreak. And it's going global, but now we have the ability to produce vaccines. And you mentioned SARS. Mm-hmm. COVID-19 is kind of a variation of that. And so there was a lot of the information that was the first round of SARS, the earlier round of SARS. Mm-hmm. They learned a lot about the virus then, and mm-hmm. so this being just kind of a variant of that, mm-hmm. Of sorts, they were able to use that information to develop a vaccine. Mm-hmm. So, with COVID-19, we were able to achieve herd immunity, yes, through people getting sick mm-hmm. and getting well, their adaptive immune system developing immunity on their own, totally. Or by the use of vaccines. And so that's why there was such this big push of getting vaccinated, and getting boosted as well to kind of maintain that herd immunity. As different variants kind of come out, they tweak the formula a little bit to just help us be prepared for the next variant, the next thing that's coming out. So that's herd immunity kind of in a nutshell.
Wow. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I know I'd rather sit over here than over here. But I want you guys to text in your comments, your questions, your concerns, and next episode we can help digest that. But in the meantime,
it's been such a pleasure.
Oh.
Yeah.